It is about conserving the ancestral intelligence of possibilities, of the language, of the culture that enable more possibilities to the future.
Now, I'm sure all of you know, but Audrey Tang is a civic hacker and a technologist who rewires systems for the public good. As Taiwan's first digital minister and now cyber ambassador, she has shown the world a new path of democracy, one that is fast, fair, and fun. For advancing the social use of technology to empower citizens, renew democracy, and heal divides, she has been named of 2025 Right Livelihood Award laureate. Her vision of plurality is a proven toolkit for finding an uncommon ground that can move us beyond polarization. And our host, of course, Sarah Yun, the founder and CEO of Socious and the visionary behind this summit. Sarah, all yours.
Thank you, Christelle. Thank you. Thank you. So, Audrey, welcome to the summit.
Very happy to be here.
It's an honor to have you here. And I like your T-shirt.
Yeah, I know. This, I think, means socially conscious.
Oh, really? Oh, that's what it means? Okay. I learned something new today.
Great.
So today, we'll explore the origins of your worldviews, the adversities that you've overcome, and how these principles are applied in your work of plurality and digital democracy. So concluding with your view on the future of being human. So first, we'd like to begin with asking some questions about your childhood. We'll explore the origin of your worldviews. That will help us understand how these principles are put into practice. So around age 9, you were dealing with existential threats. So first is life-threatening heart condition, and severe bullying at school, and a tense family environment. In order to survive that period, you effectively had to develop the emotional maturity of a philosopher by learning Taoism and psychology.
Right. When I was 8, I was like 80 years old.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And online, people thought that you were actually 80 years old,
Yeah,
right?
something like that, actually.
And this is a story of incredible strength, but maturity is also about what you leave behind. What part of a normal childhood, its chaos, its unthinking recklessness, its right to fall apart without consequence, did you have to consciously sacrifice? And does the ghost of that unlived childhood ever reappear in your life today?
Well, nobody ever asked that question before. So when I was 4, I was diagnosed with a heart condition. So by the time I was 8, as you were asking, I've already learned the breathing exercise, Qigong energetics, so that I don't have any extreme emotion anymore, whether it's extreme joy or extreme upset. It will just send me to the ICU. So because of the heart condition. And so I consciously sacrificed this idea that a child can experience the extremes. Like normally children, they experience those emotions, not the moderate version, but the extreme version. So that is the sacrifice. And now the ghost of extremism visits me in my dreams. So I make sure every day I have to sleep 8 hours, because only in my dream can I experience this kind of extreme emotion, knowing that it will not harm my heart, and it would not harm the world around it. So it's a safe space to experience that kind of extreme emotion.
Amazing. So my sleep, I guess, is so deep that I don't dream, or like I don't remember any dreams. But if you remember any of your dreams, could you share some of your dreams?
Yeah, definitely. So usually I dream of what is to happen the next day. So it's almost like a dress rehearsal. So I dreamed of this conversation. actually, last night, because you were kind enough to send me questions the previous day. And so in my dream, I was like rehearsing what to say and what kind of answers you will expect from me. And today I learned from our conversation that you did exactly the same with Gemini, I believe. So asking Gemini what would Audrey Tang answer until you can come up with question that genuinely nobody have asked before. So I guess we have been both practicing, but you in your wakenness and I in my sleep.
Yes, I would like to add that I fed all your public records, public transcripts, and all your speeches.
2,000 of them.
Yes, all of them to Gemini. But there were about a dozen books that were not digitally available, so I had to read them. So it's a hybrid human and Gemini collaboration project.
Symbiosis, very good.
Exactly. So, Audrey, much of your work is about designing systems where different groups can finally see and understand one another. I'd like to ask not about a system, but about a single moment. Can you take us back to the very first time in your life you felt truly and deeply understood by another person? What did that moment feel like, and who was it with?
So when I was 4, I remember very clearly. I was in the hospital, accompanied by my family, and the doctor did a diagnosis. Said to me and my family that this child has only a 50% chance to survive until heart surgery. And that number, 50%, made me feel very understood. Before that moment, I was like 4 or 5. Before that moment, I only know anxiety. Like I go to sleep without knowing whether I will wake up. I wake up and maybe I have some extreme emotion and then I faint and then I wake up again. There's no words for that feeling. But with 50%, I understand and associate it with a coin flip. And from that point onward, I go to sleep feeling that I'm doing a coin flip. If it doesn't fall correct, I don't wake up. It's this simple. So I feel that this diagnosis really made me understood and put into words what previously I had no words for.
Thank you for sharing that. And looking back, what does that intimate personal experience teach us about the essential ingredients of human connection that we risk losing in an age of digital communication and polarized debate?
Well, I guess vulnerability really was what my doctor put a number on, right? I'm 50% alive, and I could be 50% dead before I turn 12, which, by the way, I did get a heart surgery, and I'm good now. So I guess I was lucky. But the point is not about being lucky. It's about I had 8 years of my life feeling profoundly vulnerable. And that vulnerability is very much the connection between me and other people. We share this vulnerability. But online, if you're alone, just scrolling some social media, if you retweet, write some words, then the vulnerability is not there. For all practical matter, everybody else was invulnerable because the vulnerability does not convey through the screen when we are alone. And so that means both that people can very easily form great connections and collective action and swift trust. But it also means that violence also travel very easily because you can easily say very violent words without realizing of the vulnerability of other people across the screens.
I see. Thank you. Now, your work is built on creating platforms for trust and consensus. But trust is fragile. I'm interested in when it breaks. Could you share a time, not in public policy, but in your personal life, where your trust in a person or a group was deeply broken? You don't need to share any names or details, but rather the emotional geometry of that experience. How did you navigate the path from that sense of betrayal toward reconciliation or forgiveness? And what does that difficult human process teach us about our ability or inability to build systems that can help a divided society truly heal rather than just coexist?
Well, I guess the same moment that gave me the connection, the diagnosis, was also the moment of betrayal. Because when I listened to my doctor saying, oh, 50%, then I realized, it dawned on me, that my parents knew about this condition before giving birth to me. So they had a choice. They can choose to abort, to not give birth to me, knowing that there is this heart condition. Or they could, as they did choose, to give birth to me and knowing that I will suffer immensely. And also they will also suffer immensely. And maybe all for nothing if I die very young. Right? So it felt subjectively as betrayal because I had no control of being born. And how to heal that? I guess I got to the habit of documenting what I learned every day. Initially on tape recorder, maybe you remember those plastic things, and then floppy disk, and the internet, I guess. So still today, I have a habit of publishing before I perish every night. I make sure everything is in the public domain. So if I don't wake up, that's fine. Because people can make use of the material and feed them into Gemini. And so I think this is my healing process. That is to say, even if my parents decide to give birth to my life of indeterminate or maybe very short duration, at least it will not be wasted. I will be able to at least document something before I die.
Thank you. And I'm really glad for your parents' decision to not to abort you. And I think humanity is also very lucky to have you in this world.
You prefer me alive. I see that.
Of course. And I want to follow up on the fact that you want to document everything before you go to sleep. But maybe I'm not as fast or efficient as you, but I have so many things that I want to document before I go to sleep. But I never finish. And if I try to finish, I cannot sleep 8 hours per day. How do you manage that tension between documenting everything before you go to sleep and sleeping 8 hours at least per day?
I think you only worry about this if you are a perfectionist of some kind. By finish, I gather that you mean to get it to a publishable state, that you will feel okay to share it with other people. I don't have that. If you know that you will probably wake up the next day, you don't have time to finish. So whatever mistake you made, whatever gap you leave, it's invitation for other people to improve. So if I have a half-finished thought, I just publish that half-finished thought because that's better, in a sense, than a finished product. If you have a finished product, people just say, oh, it's very good. They press like, and then they're gone. But if it is unfinished or it is full of error, people are like, no, that is wrong. Let me contribute, right? So in many senses, I think a unfinished product is better.
Thank you. Thank you. I love it. And for the audience, this interview will leave some questions and answer time for the audience. So we'll have this interview and podcast recording unfinished, and then we'll leave it for the audience to complete as well. So,
Amazing.
thank you. So now let's go straight into plurality. Well, now systems like police are brilliant at finding uncommon ground and de-escalating conflict. But historically, major social progress from abolitionists to suffragettes came from radical dissent that refused to find common ground with an unjust majority. As we optimize our digital spaces to resolve tension, is there a risk we might blunt the necessary sharp edge of radical justice? How does plurality protect the productive conflict needed for paradigm-shifting change?
So polis is a bridging system, and bridging system works in two steps. First, it identify, as you say, some group like the majority on the center, and some groups like minority on the fringe. But the second step is where it differs. Like in a normal voting system, first past the post, the majority can always outvote the minority. So they don't need to listen to minority. Anytime you go to a vote, the majority by definition wins. However, in polis, it doesn't matter how large the group is. You only win the bridging bonus if you can start some position that gets the support from people who are unlikely to support you. So the work is actually done by the majority. It is not up to the minority to moderate away their position. It is for the people in the majority to adjust their position into the uncomfortable zone, to build the uncommon ground, because otherwise they lose the vote. Because the majority, their ideas are very uniform. And in polis, if thousands of people have the same opinion, they only count as one. But the minority is very diverse, so they count as many. So for the people in the middle, the majority, to win the bridging bonus, they have to step out of their uncomfortable zone into this uncommon ground so that they can build this idea of bridging together. So in a sense, when we deploy polis, it is led by the people closest to pain, by the people in most vulnerable positions, suffering from social injustice. But the difference is that the majority must listen. So that is what we mean by broad listening.
Thank you. Thank you. Audrey, your work treats democracy as a social operating system built on good faith. But some actors are malicious hackers using the system's own rules of openness and empathy as attack surfaces to crash the conversation. How do you patch society against bad faith? And more critically, how do you design that patch so it doesn't accidentally silence necessary radical dissent?
Well, I mean, if you ask a totalitarian leader, an authoritarian ruler, they would not say they are acting in bad faith. They would say they act in very good faith. They are protecting the society from the chaos that is the product of liberal democracy. They are not saying, oh, I'm a bad faith actor, so I must suppress journalism. They say people will be led astray by too much freedom. And democracy never delivers anyway. It only leads to chaos. And so it's better to have a totalitarian system. Some of them may even actually believe that. And so when we face this kind of adversity from totalitarian regime, we counter their narrative. And we counter their narrative not by saying that democracy is good, but making the action. Like in 2020, for example, the entire world hears the narrative from authoritarian, that only authoritarian regime can do lockdown. And look at the European country. They cannot even do lockdown well. And so a lot of human sacrifice. But authoritarian country can lock down indefinitely, and therefore better system, right? And so how to counter against that narrative? You make sure that you do broad listening. You do sense making. You make sure everybody understand about epidemiology. You stay very agile, very nimble. And by the time of Omicron, the whole world has seen democracy actually delivers better if you create common knowledge around the virus. And authoritarian regime cannot do lockdown forever, right? And so the idea of overcoming this adversity is not by stopping the authoritarian message from entering our society, because that would be authoritarian, but rather to be anti-fragile, to treat each incoming message as a seed that you can rally around and prove to the authoritarian that liberal democracy actually delivers better.
Relating to this point, your philosophy is built on radical collaboration, right? Can you tell us about a time when that core principle itself was the source of failure? A time when bringing more voices in created a worse outcome. And you realized in retrospect that a top-down, maybe totalitarian approach, hierarchical decision would have been more just or effective. What did the moment teach you about the absolute limits of collaboration?
Yeah, I remember in 2002, 2003, Taiwan was having a national conversation about universal healthcare. Our universal healthcare depends on the system of localism. So each city, each municipality, even local clinic have a lot of agenda setting power when it comes to how to deliver health better for their particular community. It makes a lot of sense. But then SARS hit Taiwan. Problem is SARS is too quick. And so whatever consensus mechanism was operating in 2002 really cannot catch up to the speed of the SARS virus. If you're an average citizen living in the kind of Taipei City or Taipei County, now New Taipei City, and so on, if you ask your county manager, your municipal mayor, the minister of health, various different district, your hospital, your clinician, everybody have a different answer about SARS, which is, I guess, really democratic, but very bad because Taiwan suffered the most from SARS. We lost the most people to SARS. And so after SARS, we decided that we have to build what's called a CECC, a centralized epidemic command center. And the centralized commander of CECC during COVID, that's our minister, Chen Shizhong, assumed almost kind of the power of a general during martial law. Like whatever he says, all the different municipal mayors, all the different ministers and deputy ministers are reporting to him and him only when it comes to counter COVID. So obviously top-down control, much better. But we also design in it a feedback system. So you can do decentralized sense-making, even if you have centralized control. So anybody can call the toll-free number 1922. For example, a 10-year-old boy called 1922 saying, oh, you're rationing our mask, but all I got was pink mask, and I'm a boy. I don't want to wear pink to the school. So obviously, you're doing something wrong. And then the next day on the daily 2 p.m. press conference, everybody wore pink. And so suddenly the boy now has a limited edition that only heroes wear or something. He become the most hip boy. And so that feedback loop of decentralized sense-making with centralized control enable agility and still enable people on the fringe to speak truth to power, even though that power was centralized. But once the COVID was gone, then so did the power. So there's no like long-lasting power. The power is just here to face the emergency.
Besides this time-bound aspect, are there any criteria on which we can decide in this situation, we should go for a top-down approach? In this situation, we should go for a most decentralized approach.
Yeah, I think you need to distinguish between the acute threats and the chronic threats. When the situation is acute, you make do with however many decentralization you have, but you don't decentralize anymore. You make sure you stop further decentralization, and then you make sure that the interconnection between the decentralized nodes are good enough to meet the emergency. And if you do not even have that, then you have to fork, like the original DAO fork. You have to basically make a majority rule, even though we know how violent it is. On the other hand, right after that, like after SARS, then you do progressive decentralization. You think of the failures during the emergency, and then you build back better. These two always work in tandem.
Thank you. So if a situation is that we already decentralized, and whether or not the situation is acute and requires top-down approach is also decided by decentralized body. Like, how do you overcome that situation? Like, who decides whether that situation is acute and requires more top-down approach?
Well, I mean, any threat is felt more acutely first by the people closest to the pain. So, of course, their decision counts, right? And so that is the test of decentralization. Whether you have good enough sense-making, meaning that the entire polity can elevate local knowledge into common knowledge in a timely manner. If you can, then you have a good feedback loop and you have good governance that will last throughout the wave of emergency. If you do not have that, then, as I said, it will fork away into essentially two different polities.
Thank you. So your work is often framed as being a good enough ancestor for future generations. This is a contract with the future, but you also describe yourself as a conservative anarchist, implying a respect for the past. How do you balance the duty to innovate for the future with the need to be a good steward of the cultural and linguistic traditions you've need to be linguistic traditions you've inherited? Can you share a time when these two duties were in genuine tension?
Well, I'm a Taoist, but politically a conservative anarchist, which to me is the same thing. The yin and yang, right? And I think the conservative part of me is not about conserving any particular structure of oppression. It is about conserving the ancestral intelligence of possibilities, of the language, of the culture that enable more possibilities to the future. And so to conserve that means that we're in constant tension with the anarchist part of me, which is unbounded experiments of voluntary cooperation. So, for example, in Taiwan, we face the same-sex marriage issue. The younger generation essentially says it's a voluntary cooperation between two people. It's not harming anyone. And so from an anarchist tradition, we should be able to experiment. But from the lineage of the conserving of the ancestral intelligence, kinship matter, lineage matter. And so to disrupt that lineage is not to conserve, but rather to disrupt the ancestral intelligence. So that's a real tension. But using broad listening, we found the uncommon ground, which is to give the same-sex couple the same rights and duties. However, they do not form kinship with each other's family. And that is very creative. So we turn the conflict, the energy, like the fire, into combustion, into momentum. So the society can go upward instead of just left or rightward. And this upwing motion resolved the tension. And to be a conservative anarchist minister is like walking on a tightrope of imaginary width. The tightrope wasn't there. Like every step, we imagineer the tightrope into existence. And so that is my constant mode of operation.
Thank you. And I want to connect to your current title. It's Cyber Ambassador at Large. I think I've never heard of that title. Can you explain a bit and like whether it exists in other countries?
Sure. I mean, I do have counterparts in other countries. Cyber ambassador it comes from the Greek word kybernetes, meaning to steer, so that the incoming waves of acute and chronic harm from emerging technology is what we're seeing. Like the deepfake investment scam, like the information manipulation of generative propaganda, like robots luring people to fall in love with robots and also induce human into hallucination. All these are new threats that is posed by the digital world. And so a cyber ambassador is basically sharing how to steer, how to navigate in this very troubled water and overcome it together. So in the past year, I went to 27 countries. Every 5 days, I changed time zone. Fortunately, I don't have jet lag. I'm too fast for jet lag to catch up. And so all the different democracies that are facing, like populism, polarization, and so on. I was able to work with their cyber ambassadors, their civil society, their academics, also the tech people, to design ways to navigate out of the polarization per minute, the ppm, which is very high in some parts of the world, but not here.
Interesting. And so you've seen democracies in 27 different countries, and I think you know very well Japan's democracy and, of course, Taiwan's democracy. How would you describe what made Taiwan a successful case for democracy compared to other countries? What were some of the underlying cultural heritage that made it possible?
Yeah, I would say that the young people in Taiwan uniquely know that they can set the agenda for the society. According to ICCS, the International Civics and Citizenship Standard Study in 2022, Taiwanese middle schooler are top of the world by a large margin when it comes to the civic knowledge, their knowledge about how the society works, and also their ability to consciously change society even before they turn 18. So I guess they're very socious. And the most socious part comes from like the 17 years olds and also the 70 years olds. They form this intergenerational unity where the young people come up with possibility and the elderly generation comes up with resource to make that possible. Because the middle generations, the 40-somethings like me, are often too busy to think about 7 generations down the line. But the 17 and 70-year-olds spend most of their time thinking about future generations. And so I think that is a beautiful camaraderie between the generation. Whereas in many other democracies, we see kind of a, I wouldn't say like enemy, but kind of indifference, irrelevance for the 70 and the 17 years olds. Like they're not naturally friends. They kind of mind their own business, right? So I think that is the unique thing going for Taiwan's democracy.
Interesting. In Japan, there are very interesting statistics that older generations tend to go to voting. They go to the elections and they vote, and it's also across different eras. So people who are in their 70s, their 80s, they usually go to vote. But when they were young, they were not voting. So like young people in Japan, they tend to be apolitical, not super interested in politics. What do you think is, what can we do to actually get young people interested in politics and participate in democratic activities?
I mean, Japan, like Taiwan, have a shrinking population. And so the young people statistically is never going to outvote the old. So why bother? So I think the point here is that if you aggregate using simple majority first past the post, it is rational for young people to be apolitical because you wouldn't actually move the needle if it's just counted this way. In Taiwan, although our population is similar in structure, we aggregate differently. So we have e-petition. We have the pro and con argument for uncommon ground. We reward, as I mentioned, the bridging bonus. We use quadratic voting in our presidential hackathon. All these new ways of aggregating opinions mean that even though it runs just like a normal survey, but it's a generative survey where the best idea can set the agenda instead of just the existing ideas, 2 ideas or 3 ideas, and you have to make a choice. So once it becomes a generative survey, the young people definitely is interested. So I think that is the idea of broad listening. And I'm very happy to see that in Japan, there are now renewed interest in this kind of generative survey and in broad listening. And we do see many young people now much more engaged because of these new mechanisms. So I understand you also do quadratic voting.
Yes. Yes, we have Socious Fund. And by the way, at 6 p.m., we will be announcing the winners or selected projects through project voting. So we don't know who the winner is at the moment, but they will receive some funding to implement their social impact, environmental impact projects.
That's great.
Thank you. And I hope that Anno-san, and there is some new political changes happening in Japan as we speak. And I hope that many young people also in this audience will be interested in Japanese politics as well. So Audrey, we've learned as builders in this space that the social code is often the harder to write than the technical code. So you've also seen promising tech fail to bridge divides, not due to bugs, but due to a lack of pre-existing trust. From those experiences, what is the single most critical human precondition that must exist in a community before pluralistic tools like yours can even begin to work?
A good night's sleep. I'm a very competitive sleeper. I have to get 8 hours every night. And the reason why is that without adequate sleep, our mind become read-only. You don't really learn from the day if you only sleep for 2 hours. Whatever the next day brings, you're still doing the code you were running yesterday. It is during sleep that we upgrade our brain to adapt to the actual situation of today and tomorrow. So a society without adequate sleep is also a society that does not upgrade easily. And so even if there is uncommon ground, even if there is a consensus, it's just not written to the mind if you don't sleep well. So I think a good condition, precondition, is just good night's sleep.
I totally agree. Yeah, this morning I was giving a opening speech, and my brain froze just in a matter of second, and I didn't sleep 8 hours. I slept only like 2 hours. So I will become a competitive sleeper as well.
Amazing. Let's race.
Thank you. Okay, so one of your core policies is radical transparency. Thousands of your meetings are transcribed, which I uploaded to Gemini and made public. While this fosters accountability, it also places you under permanent scrutiny. Has there ever been a moment where you wished for the single or simple human privacy to explore a bad idea, to be uncertain, or even to be wrong without it being etched into the public record forever?
Well, like yin and yang, I mean, this is a balance, right? So 2,000 meetings means that over 10 years, 200 meetings every year, which means probably one every workday. And one meeting is maybe 2 or 3 hours, which means I spend 10% of my time getting documented, which means that 90% of my time, including sleep, is private. And I think that is a good balance. So I both satisfy my coin flip, knowing that at least I took 2 hours every day to document what I learned. But I also have 22 hours, including sleep every day, to try new things without thinking about documenting these things. And so once you do this for like 10 years, I think the benefit is that all the language models, not just Gemini, because it's public domain, are trained on my answers. And so now, like when replying emails or whatever, I don't even need to think anymore because all the AIs can imitate my thinking extremely well. They have a shard within the language model that is an almost perfect copy of the working Audrey Tang. So now I save a lot of time. So also think about this as investment.
And now you can use me because in addition to your public records, I have all the books that are not digitized that are in my head. So you can use me as
that's right. So for the journalists here, just interview him. He can channel Audrey Tang.
So now, finally, I'd like to explore some fundamental questions about where we are headed as a species. So we started this conversation talking about your intimacy with mortality. Today, some in technology aim to solve death, treating it as a bug to be fixed. This forces a fundamental choice. If we remove the biological deadline that has shaped so much of human culture, meaning, and urgency, what new values must we consciously cultivate to design a society that still appreciates life?
Well, I wouldn't worry so much about solving mortality. I mean, the 8-year-old Audrey Tang is essentially dead, right? It's like a ship of Theseus. All the different cells, all the different neural connections, because I had very good sleep during the past 40 years, it's all renewed. So none of that are still alive in any sense, right? So I think if you keep sleep, but you remove death, humanity is still going to have urgency. There's still going to be renewal. Every 10 years, you're still going to feel you're a different person. And that is still the circle of life. So I wouldn't worry too much about removing death. And to your question about what values are even more valued if you have indefinite renewal, I think curiosity will be valued even more, because then you can afford to be curious about something that's truly difficult, that takes 200 years to really find the answer. And long-term collaboration across many generations, because then you can collaborate across 5, 6 different generations. I think that will also become much more important. And the idea of civic care, of caring about the relational health between a 10-year-old and a 1,000-year-old, that is a very new challenge that nobody had an idea of how to do civic care across that long time span. So I'm very optimistic about our ability to find new values.
Amazing. And what are you most curious about today?
Well, I'm curious about what the audience will ask, and and I hope that we still leave them time.
We will have time. Okay, so you have spent your life understanding and improving complex systems, from your own body to digital platforms to democratic governance. This is the work of a problem solver. But I want to ask about a moment that wasn't a problem to be solved. Can you describe a moment of pure, simple, and perhaps useless joy in your life? A moment completely disconnected from work, technology, or a desired outcome, as we design a future where AI may handle much of the useful outcome, problem solving work for us. What does your memory of simple joy tell us about the future purpose of human consciousness?
Well, first of all, I think I'm not a problem solver in the sense of I come up with solutions. The things that people know about me, the mask maps, the shortening of the text filing system, the privacy preserving contact tracing, all sort of things, these are not my invention. I just create a space so that the local inventor that are facing tremendous challenge have the resource to flourish, and also have the stage to make their very hyperlocal solution into national consciousness in just 2 or 3 days. So this is what I do. I hold the space, I cultivate the space, but I don't come up with solutions. So I think this is a general pattern. I find the most joy when I see that the flourishing of the life in the kind of garden that I help cultivate go beyond my imagination, right? In my dream, I dream of possible future worlds. And I find joy when the actual reality is even exceeds my dream. I think that is what brings me the most joy. Like I wake up and I check reality and I find it's wilder than my dream. That is a lot of joy.
Thank you. And following that, I believe a limited lifespan helps us focus on what truly matters. If you learned you had only 18 months left to live, how would you spend that time?
Exactly the same, I guess, because I've been living with this condition for quite some time. I guess I'll sleep more, and because I guess to sleep is also to have the energy to create, to write more poetry. I guess as a poetician, most of my political work is just writing poetry, and if I only have a year and a half to live. If only I know about this and nobody else know about it, I do exactly the same. But if my friends, my family, everybody also know about this, I think they will want more poetry. They will want to have more piece of me left behind once I'm gone. So I guess I'll be pressured to write more, and therefore I have to sleep more.
And why do you love poetry so much?
Well, I think poetry is the art of putting into words the imagination, the dream of the impossible. And many ideas were once considered impossible. Uh, Ursula Le Guin famously said, once upon a time, people consider the kings, their power come from the god, and therefore cannot be challenged. And that's like a law of physics, like it's just how the world works. But some people dream of some other possibility, and they see the divine power of kings, like any human power, can be challenged by human power. But without poetry, that's not possible. Today, many people see extractive capitalism as like physics, just a matter of the world. But with poetry, we can also dream of alternate possibility and make that our shared reality.
Beautiful. Thank you. To close, Audrey, you built an inner operating system to survive a fragile heart, a hostile schoolyard, and a tense home. For those listening now lost in their own storm, what is the first line of code they can write for themselves tomorrow morning to begin debugging their life?
Take your morning off, sleep more, be a competitive sleeper.
Thank you. That was beautiful. So now we have some time for questions from the audience. I think we have about 10 minutes. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, Joe.
Thank you. Tenakwe, thank you very much indeed. I'm a great fan of your work. Audrey, the traditional systems of governance, institutional trust rely on archives and clerks and laws, all human and all fallible. With Cardano, with blockchain, that changes things. And it changes how we think about forgiveness, how we think about the future, and how we think about the past. How can we reconcile the attributes of blockchain, particularly Cardano, and what we need as human beings in governance and government generally?
Thank you. Very good question. I think blockchain layer 1 still runs on layer 0. That is to say, blockchains, at least the current generation of blockchains, still require human care. If nobody care to maintain a chain anymore, whether it's permission, whether it's public, it just ceases to exist. If the layer 2 chains think of a better way to manage a layer 1 chain, then the layer 0, the social layer, may one day promote that layer 2 into layer 1 and say that that is the default going forward. Again, that doesn't happen because of the smart contract. That happens because essentially of revolution. So blockchain, although it is a legal system that is determined by code, the human layer still carries the revolutionary potential. And I think keeping the outside game of revolutionaries in mind is the most important thing for blockchain governance. Because if you design a governance system that see the revolutionary energy, like volcano energy, not as something to avoid, not something to be designed out, but rather like geothermal energy, you can tap into the magma and then channel that into new institutional design, then the blockchain can renew itself even at the L1 level. And I think that's very important.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you so much for your dialogue. Thank you so much. 私はウズベキスタン出身。I'm from Uzbekistan and I'm politician in Japan. 私は日本で政治家もやっております。で、多文化共生のために日々頑張っておりまして、So I'm fighting for multicultural coexistence in Japan. And if you have some advice, what is more important for multicultural coexistence for Japan? Thank you.
A great question. I translate the name of my country, 中华民国, in English as a transcultural republic of citizens, because 中 means in between. So in between many cultures. And I think it's this in-betweenness that gives Taiwan its ability to renew. Because we have profound cultural differences in Taiwan. As you probably know, some people in Taiwan want to free China. Some people in Taiwan want to be free from China. Very different. But we somehow find a bridge to connect, not to compromise, but rather to co-create. So I think that the point of coexistence is not to think about the co as compromise, because that just leaves everybody equally unhappy. I think it's important to think of it as co-creation and leaves everybody slightly happier and nobody very unhappy. I think that is a much better heuristic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for your great talk. I'm Yusaito from Japan, Tokyo, and I would like to ask you about the power of OSS community, open source community, and even voluntary open source community to the social change. I myself do hackathons on weekdays. I love it, and our public website of the coronavirus in Tokyo was operated by OSS community, and I have heard you have also committed to it. And so I would like to ask about the power of OSS community to social change.
That's a great question. Yeah, open source, the idea itself is a social innovation. Before open source, the movement was called free software. And what it means is that everybody should have the freedom to study, to improve, to share software. So it's like a human rights movement. But open source says that, okay, it's also an economic movement, because if you share the burden of maintenance, then you create better software. If you invite people to attack your software before the bad people do, then you get more secure software. So the open source movement is a marketing machine for the free software movement. It creates a flywheel to get socially conscious capital into the free software movement. Previously, free software movement relied mostly on donation, but with open source, you even have publicly listed company that only do open source. And at some point, even Microsoft, previously very closed, they publicly apologize on GitHub and say, yeah, maybe open source is a better idea. And so it affects system level change using economic power. So I think the open source movement, of course, is helpful, like the COVID dashboard case, to help tackle some especially common knowledge issues, so that the social activists' ideas can become common knowledge, as in, I know, you know, everybody knows that this is a better way of doing things. But even more importantly, I think open source movements show that it is possible to change the rule of the game into a positive sum one using purely economic argument. And you don't have to make a human right argument at all. But as a side effect, you improve human right. And I think this is a very novel way of thinking about the theory of change compared to the more traditional way of challenging the power. That is, of course, very noble and still very valid. But this is more like a swarm, like a quantum tunneling, so that some of the economic power of the small innovators tunnel through the existing power of domination, and then people just gather behind the wall of power. So that's tunneling, quantum tunneling. I think it's a lesson from the open source community to the wider activism community.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much for your incredible talk. My name's Risa. I'm Taiwanese Japanese. So growing up, I kind of saw the differences in politics. And when I visited Taiwan and I saw my own grandmother, my ama, being so engaged with politics, I did wonder what it was that made Japan and Japanese politics so different. And I think it could be because in Taiwan, there's a sense of that your country is being under threat. So I wonder, with the declining voting rates in Japan as well, is some sort of trigger needed, or what is kind of the catalyst that is needed to spark that political engagement again?
I mean, I consider it a blessing if you don't have to face acute crisis. Uh, I think it's important to realize that in Taiwan, we also had decades under martial law where it is simply illegal to try out those new social ideas, to form a political party, to start a newspaper, to run your radio station. None of these were legal. Of course, people with social consciousness still managed to do some work even during the martial law. For example, through charity, through spirituality, through the cooperatives movement, they still did a lot. But my point is, even though at the time people were not feeling that democracy is new, is fragile, and things like that, people still exercised civic care. And they really built this horizontal network across different spirituality, different ethnicities, different groups, and so on, that gained legitimacy even before democratization. And you can even argue that once democratized, even the president directly voted in since 1996 did not enjoy more legitimacy than the charity or civil society organization leaders. So the president have to seek approval from the civil society even after democratization. So I think the natural disasters, even though they're not existential, the earthquakes, the typhoons, and so on, are what unites the Taiwanese people across their differences. And we do have this here in Japan as well. I mean, earthquakes, typhoons, everything, right? More recently, like in Hualien, because of the flood disaster, people of very different political inclinations, cultural inclination, all become like Superman, right? Helping the recovery process. And we see exactly the same here in Japan. In fact, I believe the communication system called Line was invented because of the ability to coordinate across natural disaster here in Japan, and they become very useful in Taiwan as well. So my point is, I don't think you need a political emergency. Just focus on the natural disasters. Just focus on the issues that everybody faces on a day-to-day basis. It's like going to the gym. You exercise your civic care using smaller scale disaster. And so when the truly large scale one hits, whether it's pandemic or whether it's something else, then you can activate those muscles. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much for your great questions. And thank you so much for your generosity. Your perspective is a gift. And thank you for sharing your humanity with us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Live long and prosper.
Thank you very much, Audrey. Thank you very much, Sarah.